Journeys Ahead, Draft 2, Chapter 11, A Lunar Offer. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Okay, I now have the lands of Lunar Souls located. Sending coordinates now. Flashing green, Jet projected what looked to be a serial number of some kind in a blurry hologram-like form, getting the attention of Void, Jida, and Pofnu. Reality 888-766-542-179. Planet unknown. Be wary, friends. This seems to be a hostile environment. The supercomputer asked down to the duo below him, who were back to wearing their adventure-ready attires. This time, however, Void stood with Pofnu sticking her head out of his backpack, prepared for the day ahead. Alright, you ladies ready? The Spark questioned as he shot a portal open within the living room center. Yes, we are. The voice of Nock then suddenly exclaimed with a boastful attitude, getting the three of them to turn around in place. Wait, what? His little cousin then asked in a state of utter confusion, as she could now see Nock and Kot wearing backpacks and boots. For a moment, Void and Jida weren't sure as to what they were doing, till it all suddenly clicked. Oh no. Void whispered under his cold breath as a sinking feeling began to arise in his stomach. What? Can't make room for two more? The flip side inquired with a smug expression as the two mechanics both made their way forwards. We're coming with. After you two came back like a wreck yesterday, I started to realize that I can't just stand by like this. You need someone to watch your backs. The mechanic explained as he pulled off what looked to be a makeshift pistol off a utility belt that was now restrained around his waist. It wasn't a normal weapon. It was more akin to the shape of a flare gun. The item even had pulsating yellow seam lines extending to its barrel. What's that? Pofnu asked. A little weapon of my own making. When reconstructing Jet, we also came across what I assumed to have been your blueprints, Void. Took a few hours, but I was able to make this thing, gun, blaster. I haven't tested it yet. Point is, we're coming with. Squinting with a dumbfounded expression, Void wasn't exactly sure how to react to this information. But Jida, she was more on the concerned side for her family's safety. She didn't like this idea at all. I'm not sure if you should, is all she could say to her stern-faced cousin with a wave of uneasy emotions circling into her mind. If you two are running the risk of getting hurt, then I'm going to. Nock repeated back with the tone of a worried parent, while Kot just continued to give a smirk. I just kind of want to see another dimension, to be honest. He said with honesty, which only led Void sucking in the air through his clenched teeth. Guys, I don't know about this. He tried to sway before getting cut off. Why? You're bringing a baby with you. That's more liable than two depressed 20-year-olds. Well, 20-plus-year-olds. I'm not old. Kot stayed with a point the Pofnu sticking out head.
Actually, I'm 4.
The fox spat with an unhappy glare towards the flip side, clarifying that she was not an infant. At least in her own mind. We tried to get her to stay, but she just didn't want to leave our sides. Jida explained on Pofnu's behalf while reaching over and scratching the little one's head. In reaction, Pofnu gave a tiny smile and blep, wagging her 6 tails from the act of affection. She could also be useful with communication efforts. I can't risk you two getting hurt. Void tried to reason on, only for Nock to reply with his own. And I can't risk never hearing from my cousin again. To this, Void shut his mouth and stood in an upright position. He couldn't blame Nock. After hearing about what had happened in Jida's life, it was really no surprise that he would want to tag along. Even so, it still worried him. Knock, you guys don't have powers, Jaya tried to say, whilst awkwardly adjusting the beanie atop her head that had gone lopsided in the morning. We have that gun and brain power. Surely that could come in handy. Kyle replied with a lean to Nock's P-shaped head as he continued to give a stern expression. Doesn't matter. What does matter is making sure you both come home safe. Jida, if you didn't come back without a word or hint as to what happened or to where you were, Nock boasted with a raise in his hands. That's on me. For a long few seconds, Void and Jida stood in ponderous silence before begrudgingly nodding their heads to Nock's wishes. Fine, the guitarist said with a turn and marched towards the portal, with Void close behind. I just ask you both listen to my words. This world is apparently hostile. Void asked, with Jed joining into the fray. Very hostile. Kid, hostile is our middle name. Let's go! Cop bellowed with both arms raised as he suddenly sprinted past everyone and crossed through. Wait, Cot! Jida shouted before following suit. Tears grace. Void groaned before snagging Nock by the back of his shirt collar and running after. Hey, I can run too, you know! The little mechanic roared with disdain before Void, him, and Pofnu crossed through and into the other side. In a crystal blue shine, the portal opened up with Cot and Jida exiting first, followed by Void, Pofnu, and then Nock. All coming to sliding halts, the group found that they had entered upon wet grass that was being sprinkled upon from a light rainfall. Craning their eyes upwards, they all took in this brand new world's vast sight, leaving them rather stunned. It was daytime, a cloudy one at that. Normal, green-looking grass expanded up and onwards as far as their eyes could see, going across several hills and even distant mountains, all filled to the brim with titan-sized trees that scraped the clouds above. Before them, at the bottom of a massive hilled slope, was a giant, glistening body of greenish-blue water. This large formation led itself all the way towards a faintly fog-concealed kingdom that left Nock and Cot gasping in amazement. Ancient towers and structures all rose high towards the sky, being constructed in a deep gray type of stone. Flowing in the wind were old flags, designed with a symbol that looked akin to an eclipse. Moss, vines, and all sorts of alien-looking plant life had seemed to overtake this once grand civilization, making everyone rather confused. This place didn't appear to be inhabited by anyone. Either that, or these crescents, as Pofnu described them as, didn't care much for their cleanliness. Well, that's something, alright. Jida stayed with a set of hands to her hips, while Nock just looked on at the structures in amazement. Wow! It's like a fantasy game come to life! Holy crap! He exclaimed with an adjustment in his glasses, as Cot gave a simple, sick, as a reaction. Looking down, the guitarist set her orange eyes upon an alien-looking skull that had been taken over by nature. It was like a bull skull, except it had 3 sockets instead of 2. This deceased creature's hollow eyes appeared to stare back up into her own, almost looking as though it was saying hello.
Welcome to the land of lunar souls. Looks like how my father would describe it.
Pofnu introduced to the group in a tired little voice, while Void began looking down the hill's slope. Seems a bit empty. Jida stayed with a hand to her chin as Nock and Cot took a few steps forwards towards the slope. This place looks, pretty dead, Cot added with a puzzled face before gently kicking the skull and sending it tumbling down the hill. Looking from the others and then to the rolling skull, Void shrugged before sitting down the hill's wet curve. With this, he extended his arms forwards, took hold of the grass, and then pushed himself downwards, sliding to the very bottom. Whee! Pofnu cried with a raise in her arms, leaving those above a tad stunned to the act. Hey, wait up! Jada called out before she and Ka proceeded to sit and slide down the hill as well. Seriously? It's wet! Nock whined, watching the four descend further and further. Fine! You enjoy having wet asses while... Slipping with a single step, Nock gasped and then shouted as he began to tumble down the hill in a flailing motion. Reaching the bottom, Void with Pofnu giggling in his ear, swiftly stood back upon his feet and approached the water's edge. With caution-filled eyes, he crossed his arms and gazed out over the massive lake formation, feeling almost entranced by its beauty. Behind him, Jada and Kot stood from their slide, approaching the spark and gazing out at the water as well. A small shoreline of rock sat by the water's bay, as well as an old dock that looked to be frail with age. Ow! Ow! God! Son of a... Nock continued to scream as he came to a rough, rear-sliding stop at Kot's legs. Looking back, Jada on the flip side eyed the mechanic, whose eyeballs were spinning from the dizzying fall. You alright? Jada asked, while Kot helped his friend back up. Fantastic. Without saying a word, Void marched towards this old dock, with a sense of curiosity in his heart. Quietly walking across its wooden and rotted form, he looked to the left, then to the right, until looking back ahead to see a post sign. The thing looked to have been there for years. Its wood was all mossy, rotted with several barnacles protruding out of it. Barely visible, there had been a message written in a very curvy form of English, to Void's surprise. Squinting, the spark leaned in close and read aloud. To get across, throw a rock. There the Lefkas will get you to the kingdom's dock, without loss. Raising an eyebrow to this cryptic wordplay, Void stood back to his full height and looked at Jada as well as the others with a puzzled gaze. What the hey is a Lefkas? She questioned, with Kot speaking after. And what's with the riddle? Looking down by his feet, Void took notice of a fairly large stone that had been left atop the dock. Reaching down, he took hold of its jagged shape before gazing back up to the others. 'Cause it's not a riddle? I know riddles when I see one. This is just a poor way of rhyming. The spark corrected, before turning, bringing his arm back, and throwing the stone into the water. With the chuck, they all watched as the stone rose high into the air with an arched form all the way till it made a loud flop when it hit the water. You know riddles? Nock asked, as mere ripples extended across the waves once the rock's impact came. I do, actually. A lot. I used to have this book that was full of them. It's gone now, though, but I still nail them from here. Void explained with a tap to his head, as nothing appeared to happen with the water. Oh, yeah? What kind of cup can't hold water? Jada asked, with a flash in her grinning braces. A cupcake. Void answered right away, leaving her surprised with the correct answer. Dang. She said in awe, while nothing continued to happen revolving the water. There was no grandiose entrance from whatever was described. No explosion of mysterious origin. Nothing. It was just the equivalent to skipping a rock. One cool splash and the next. Nothing. Well, this sucks. Cobb blurted with a yawn, until the rock was suddenly blasted back out of the water. In sudden shock, the five on the dock immediately leapt back in surprise, as the rock landed hard at Void's feet. With stunned eyes, they all looked back to the lake as something began to arise. Raising his arms, Void stood in front of Jada and the others with a sudden protective instinct. while the water continued to bubble and ripple in a large formation. Then, from its depths, arose an animal that took them all by surprise. "Jesus Christ!" Nock exclaimed as they all laid their eyes upon a massive, stingray-like creature. The animal looked to have been about the length of a school bus, and had the width of a small-sized home. Its wet skin looked smooth and slick, dyed with a green and black color palette. The creature's large, dopey eyes glistened a milky white shine, but had no ill will behind them. The most interesting thing of note was the fact that it had 2 tails instead of 1. Both, of course, were tipped with stingers. Gently, the animal swam its way over and bowed its front half down, looking to be gesturing for the 3 of them to hop on. Smiling, Void turned to Jida and then the others, before gesturing to them to hop on. "Wait, are you crazy? There's no seats or anything. Can't you just portal us over?" Jida started out, knowing that she couldn't warp that far from where they stood. "To waste both my batteries and a view? Come on." Void returned as he gently walked upon the creature's back. "Woo! Let's cause ride!" Kot shouted as he followed close behind while the mechanic slowly waddled forwards. Wincing, Jida did as well, until stopping in a sudden halt. With a nervous face, she looked at the creature and then to the giant lake before her eyes. Catching note of this, Void tilted his head and asked, "Hey, is everything alright?" Shaking her head in response, Jida crossed her arms before explaining, I don't do well with large bodies of water. I hate them." She revealed while she began to rock back and forth upon her toes and heels. "What? Really? Why?" Void questioned, making Jida squint in a nervous stance. "A lot of water can hurt her, Void. If she's submerged for a long time, it could possibly extinguish her flames, in turn, putting out her heart." Nock whispered with a cautious tone to his voice, as Jida remained rocking back and forth with anxiety-filled thoughts. With his newfound information, the Spark stepped forwards, opened both his hands, and gestured for Jida to take them. Looking down, the guitarist caught wind of the gesture before looking up to meet Void's gaze. The Spark's large eyes seemed to glint a beautiful shade of blue now that they were in proper daylight. And from it, she could see the stare of compassionate trust within. "Don't worry. I'll make sure you don't fall in. You can hang on my back if that makes you comfortable." Eyes widening just a tad, Jida uncrossed her arms and ever so gently released a shaken breath, nervous about what she knew she had to do. Raising both of her hands up, she proceeded to place them within Void's soft metal mitts that gently held on to her. For a long moment, Jida stood there, feeling the wind breeze through her hair while her heart began to beat like a rapid drum. She couldn't help but notice just how warm and soft Void's hands felt. It was truly like a type of skin. It was so alien to her, yet so interesting all the same. With an eased form, Void pulled Jida forwards, letting her take one step upon the stingray and then another, before standing fully upon the animal in a wobbly stance. "There you go. Now, how'd you— Oh!" With a sudden motion, Jida leapt upon Void, her arms wrapped around his neck, and legs around his waist. To this, the Spark and the others gasped from the sudden motion, as they didn't expect her to do that. "Oh, okay, here, let's try this." Void stammered as he began to turn parts of himself around, almost looking like a Rubik's Cube. He turned his head, arms, legs, and waist forwards, making the backpack Poffy was in look like a baby carrier. "Alright, you guys ready?" Void asked to knock Kot's and Poffy's agreement, and for Jida to quickly shake and shove her head into his chest. Kneeling down with Poffy in front of him, Void gently pat the Stingray's head before saying, "Alright, buddy, take us to that big city in the distance." With a flap in its flippers, the large stingray whirled itself around and began quickly swimming towards the kingdom. With a set of hops and skips, the animal went up and above the water, acting like a thrown flat stone to some degree. Finding her balance, Void, Pofnu, and Kot seemed to laugh in excitement from this new experience, while Jida continued to press her face further into Void's hood, while Nock used Kot's legs for balance. "Don't worry, Freckles, we're almost there," Spark cried as the stingray thrusted forwards, splashing and cooing all the while. "Good! Just let me know when we're actually on solid land," Jida retorted back with a muffled voice, leaving Void to nod his head. "Yeehaw!" Kot exclaimed with a full sense of wonder, while Nock felt his lips getting blown back from the wind. As they grew closer, the large kingdom grew to be bigger and bigger as the stingray quickly approached, until at last, they made it. Coming to a halt, the stingray swerved and then slid itself upon the next beach before the grand location. Within the fraction of a few seconds, they had gone from one end to the other. Amazing, Void thought. Hopping off, the Spark, who still had Jida clinging onto him, landed on the sandy and rock-filled beach, with Nock and Kot close behind. Turning, the Spark waved to the Lefkoss with a smile, before it waved back with its tails, and then returned to the lake. "Thank you, O wise beast from the lagoon." Kot called with a bow, as Void started tapping Jida's arms. "Hey, Jida, we're off the water," Void assured, which left the musician perking up with relief. "Huh? What? Oh, cool. Thank God." She stuttered, letting go of Void, who returned back to his normal self. As he did this, Jida turned and looked upwards, and immediately felt her jaw drop from the sight before them all. It was truly one from mere fantasy. "Holy crap!" she muttered, gazing upon a large set of chiseled stone arches that led into a towering yet empty kingdom. Hello, 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 echo. Jida shouted aloud as her, Void, and the others walked through the ever-expansive kingdom grounds. Old shops lined the streets. Empty guard towers went about as far as the eye could see. And of course, there was the endless silence that made them all a little uneasy. "So, land of lunar souls. Seems a little soulless," Kot said aloud as a gentle breeze bristled in between the four wanderers. "Yeah, I hope these guys aren't dead," Void replied, slightly worried as to the Crescent's whereabouts. "Hello? Hey, is there anyone here that's a part of the Crescents? Look, we're just here to ask a few questions, and we'll be gone in a flash." Nock asked aloud, with a sharp throw in his arms to the side. Still, there was no response. Not a sound to be made, nor a cricket to be chirped. It was odd. Void had never been to a world that was so quiet. He didn't like it. "Oh, great. Looks like we're going to be searching this ghost town for a good while," Void grumbled while crossing his arms, as Jida tried to focus upon her surroundings. There was nothing. Huffing, she walked up beside the Spark, who was a few feet in front of Nock and Kot. "Well, hey, it shouldn't take too long. Gotta have faith, you know? Besides, I thought of another riddle to pass the time," Jida mentioned with a devious smirk. Raising an eyebrow, the Spark smiled and then turned to the musician. Alright, let's hear it then." Void beckoned, placing his hands upon his hips mid-stride. Now placing her hands behind her back, Jida side-eyed the Spark before beginning. "Okay, what's always found on the ground, but never gets dirt— a shadow. A shadow never gets dirty." Void blurted, cutting Jida off and getting it right on the dot once again. "Oh, come on! You just cut me off there!" Jada yelled playfully while shoving the spark with a tad annoyance. Hey, I told you, Freckles. I know riddles. It's gonna be hard to stump me. Void reinstated while slightly chuckling. No kidding, you frickin' nerd. Jada retorted while sticking her tongue out and pulling her right eyelid down as a comeback of sorts. Walking on, the four continued to call out for anyone or anything that could have been the kingdom, only for the usual silence to answer back. Sighing, Void put his hands into his short pockets and looked upwards towards the sky. The clouds continued to move along at a snail's pace, concealing the view above within its many gray layers. Looking back down, the spark kicked a stone across the pavement before asking something else. Hey, I caught wind of Nock mentioning that you dropped out of high school? It was late last night as he was talking to Cot. And I was just wondering why would you know? That is, if you want to answer that. The spark said with a scratch to the back of his head. I'm just a little curious as to why. Turning, Jada gently shrugged before shoving her hands into her sweater, pondering on how she would reply. You know, Nock asked me that same question. It was actually moments before you arrived unannounced. Jada revealed while slightly biting the inside of her cheek. I replied with something along the lines of, I just want to help people with my powers and stuff. And although, yeah, that's part of it, it's not really the full reason. The guitarist began, while craning her sights to the side and away from Void. You see, after the night of 1,000 flames, I never really clicked with anyone. Every time I tried to make friends or get to know someone, I'd either be ignored or given weird looks because of my appearance. I tried joining a band, but that didn't work out. Jada revealed, now toying with her fingers inside of her pockets. With my appearance came a lot of bullying too. I figured that maybe the knowledge road wasn't right for me. If I wasn't accepted as a fellow person by my peers, then, the guitarist added, while feeling a sense of sadness creep into her heart. Nock got pretty upset when I told him, but it's hard to explain the truth to someone in full like that. I know you saw my pills. I know there's an uncomfortable side of me that kind of spills out a bit. And to be real, I'm a bit of a wreck, but I'm doing my best. As we all are. Jada finished, looking the Void with restful eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't intend to bring it up like that. Void apologized with a concerned gaze, to which Jada smiled at. Oh, no, you're fine. Talking about these things in this kind of way is supposed to be good for the mind, I've been told. Plus, all this adventuring and adrenaline stuff has helped me clear my head too. Like, in the span of 3 days, I've seen so many crazy, scary, and beautiful things. I guess I'm just comfortable around you with this? Jada replied, while locking eyes with Void. That or, maybe I just really like you. Blushing, Void looked at the side and then scrunched his shoulders. The feeling had returned once more, the one from the previous night. His heart began to violently beat. His nerves started to tingle as a familiar cold sweat began to spill from his head. I actually wanted to apologize about last night. Void whispered with a set of glowing warm horns, which sparked Jada to bashfully look aside. You're fine. I was the one who practically instigated it. She nervously mumbled whilst beginning to stroke her hair. You kidding? I started dancing with you. Void snapped back, getting Jada to roll her eyes. I was the one who leaned in first, Blue. She reminded in a hard whisper. And I leaned after. The spark continued to retort, when Jida said something that silenced them both.
Well, sorry that you just so happen to be hot.
After these words were shared, both Void and Jida went awkward-faced mid-stride. Both of their cheeks were burning with their respective colors, as they just stared ahead, unsure of how to properly respond. Jida looked as though she had just eaten a lemon, and Void, well, he was rather surprised that she viewed him in such a way. He couldn't deny it, though. It really made him feel good confidence-wise.
How about we discuss this at a later time? Agreed.
The two replied after the other, as the other two adults began to lag behind. She's flirting, the flip side said down the knock, who looked unamused. He groaned. Also, should we tell them we heard all that? They're whispering, but they're like 5 feet apart from us. Kot then asked with a raised eyebrow. No. Knock bluntly replied. Gotcha. Would you like the flirt? We did it a lot in high school. To this, Knock just looked on ahead and groaned out one final remark. Kot, shut up. As the group of 5 continued onwards, they expected more of the same boring castle grounds to greet them. That was until the unexpected occurred. Flying in from the rainy fog came a green, fishnet-tied potion bottle. Before anyone had time to react, it shattered apart before Knock and Kot and released a gas-like fume. Before the two kids in front of them had time to register this attack, another bottle came flying in, which crashed in front of them as well. What the? Void exclaimed as moments after, Kot passed out. Kot? Whoa, hey! Why is... Knock exclaimed into a drowsy tone before he too passed out. Whoa! Blue? Jida questioned as she too fell asleep. Jida? Void asked aloud before succumbing to the forced effect of sleep as well. What the... Void groaned awake in a drowsy-sounding moan as his senses began to kick in full. The first thing that he was able to sense was just how cold it was. His knees felt frozen in place, hard and cold upon what he realized to have been mossy stone. The air seemed to have a temperature on par with a walk-in freezer. Chilly, wintry, yet no snow was to be seen. Numb is how the spark felt. Numb and afraid. What? He weakly asked out while opening his wide eyes. Blue? Jida suddenly murmured from his left-hand side, getting him to turn with an audible creak in his metal neck. Jida sat kneeling in a slump. Her hands and ankles were chained and cuffed by a mysterious green glow that seemed to dim her powers. The flame-colored hair upon her head was now dimmed to the same degree as a dying campfire, which appeared to have been weakening her. Freckles! Void nervously called, as he too found himself to be in these strange cosmic shackles. What? Hey! Hey! He exclaimed with a boiling sense of fear and rage building in his head. Void then tried to activate his blades, axe, or even Nova runes, which unfortunately didn't work. Hey, look at that! We're tied up. Kot said from the right, as him and Knock too sat in defeat. Nice one, Captain Obvious. The mechanic spat in response, as he too struggled against his restraints. Pofnu? Hey, Pofnu, you alright, kiddo? Void asked with a cold sweat, worried for the little one's safety.
I'm here.
she replied in a whisper, whilst poking her snout out through Void's backpack seal. You okay? He asked, worried at the Pathnu's condition.
Are you?
She questioned right back, before they were all silenced by a voice.
Well, what do we have here?
The vocals of a deep-toned male asked from a blurry red haze from afar that sounded to be a bit on the older side of life. Perking up, everyone who was shackled down craned their heads upwards and were met with a terrifying sight. It appeared that they were within some type of deep chasm chamber, filled with old stone, moss-covered walls, as well as sharp tall pillars. Old, rusted chandeliers dangled above their heads on mangled chains. Sealed arch windows stretched across the walls, while there had even been hints that there was a stretch of carpet below them all. The castle, Void pieced together. They were somewhere within this kingdom's large castle spire. That thought, however, was the least of their worries, for the big glaring issue at hand were the hooded figures before them. Many were tall and cloaked in multicolored robes. They all had battle-scratched steel bird-shaped masks, accompanied with sunken, glowing eyes. There had to at least be 20 or so in the room, Void counted, as each one stared upon him with a threatening, glowing-eyed aura. Oh. Well, this ain't good, Jada murmured with a dumbfounded face, while Nock tried reaching for his gun.
Now, what brings you travelers to our front doorstep? Are you another group of raiders searching for big game? Or are you just blinded by greed-filled stupidity?
The deep and hoarse voice asked aloud once more, from what Void and the others could now see that had been leaving the mask of the nearest hooded soul. This figure was the tallest out of the bunch, displaying a threatening tone that even Void couldn't shake. Around their body was an emerald green clad robe, designed with pristine metals and chiseled armor parts. Like the others, they wore a steel bird mask, with bright and intimidating yellow eyes peeking through its holes. Showing their authority, they held onto a staff with a glowing pink crystal shard blade at its top, a shard that looked to hold a lot of power. Well, hello! I am Cot Rivers, and these are my homeboys and girls. We are here in search for the Crescents. The flip side boasted with a smug expression, causing everyone to give him a nasty stink eye. Cut! Nock groaned, as he was not expecting to end up in this kind of situation.
Well, it would appear you hit the jackpot, sweetheart. Why come and search for higher beings such as us?
While the other figures said from the shadows, revealing to everyone that they were indeed the Crescents.
Do you seek death?
Another with blue glowing eyes questioned, as tensions began to rise. No. We aren't here looking for trouble. We're actually... Void gruffed as he awkwardly hobbled up to his feet. Here, seeking your help. We were told you understood, multiversal constellation patterns, he explained while trying to maintain a steady balance in place. Like, just how they all go together? We're just trying to find a clear pattern layout in order to stop some really bad people from doing really bad things. Jada joined in with a nervous stare, causing the green one to speak.
What kind of trouble would lead you fools to ask this nonsense? Speak more clearly before we take your heads and knock them to our walls.
This lead Crescent boasted with his authoritative voice that left the group of oddballs below a tad worried. Reality-tearing monsters. They call themselves the Glitched. We have discovered that they are traveling through the constellations themselves from one world to the next. But we can't figure out where it all leads back to. The Spark explained, getting a small murmur to arise from the crowd.
Bah! Those little freaks were sealed away long ago. Good attempt at coaxing some information out of us, little one.
One of the Crescents exclaimed, getting a small uproar of laughter to arise.
They're telling the truth.
Pofnu suddenly shouted as she leapt out from Void's backpack to a whirlwind of gasps.
A spectral fox?
One of the birds shouted from the back as the little kid marched forwards. Pofnu! Void called with worry as the small mammal refused to heed his words.
My people are gone. Those monsters took them. They took all of them.
The little pup boasted with a surge of anger flaring from her heart.
Please! You gotta help us. Other worlds could be dying as we speak. I know your kind don't care about that, but we do. We aren't lying.
The little one continued to bellow, sparking the one in green to lean forwards with a curious nature.
The spectral fox? Taken out by Glitched?
A crescent whispered in the back with a squint in their orange glowing eyes.
Impossible!
One bellowed in utter confusion.
They never let the little ones roam freely. Could it be?
They all went on, sparking a massive conversation to erupt from the crowd. The mood went from immediate hostile intentions to a sudden, burning curiosity among them. It was appearing that what Pofnu said held true. The way these figures were discussing was out of shock and disbelief. It appeared that their relationship was closer than the little fox let on.
Silence!
The green one boomed with a raise in his staff, which quickly dropped the tensions within the room to an eerie silence. The look in his eyes was that of eagerness to learn more about these supposed fates, while still holding on to a bit of resentment to the outsiders.
Child, do you speak the truth, or is this lie of blasphemy?
He then questioned with a sidewards tilt in his bird-shaped head. Without responding, Pofnu's face scrunched with visible tears welling in her eyes that were quickly followed up by an audible whimper. In response, Jida and Void hobbled their way over and rested by the little one's side, whilst making hard eye contact with the bird. Please, all we are asking is for a way to see the constellations in full. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Void expressed, leaving the leader of the Crescents to think.
How about we strike a deal?
He gruffed with a stance back to his full height.
There is a beast within these lands, a titan, one that has been draining our water wells for years. If you strike this Goliath down, we will grant you a way to read your little issue.
To this offer, Void and the others eyed the being down, who just glared back with his solid-only words. A titan? They all thought, as other Crescents began to butt in.
Oh, a worthy deal.
Worthy, terrible, oh!
One of them exclaimed with a set of claps.
Oh, quite an offer. How treacherous and exciting.
Another stated as Void tilted his head. A titan? He questioned, as his allies all held nervous stares.
If what you all speak is to be believed, then prove yourselves. Prove your trust. Prove that your hearts are not of stone, but that of gold.
The leader of this pack asked, with an added clack to the bottom of his spear. Wait. So let me get this straight. You still don't believe us with this crying child in front of you? Is that what you're telling me? Also, you want us to kill whatever it is he said to get some stupid information? Nock asked with a befuddled tone, leaving the green one to nod. What? Are you serious? Blue? Jida angrily huffed as all eyes were now on the spark, who squinted in annoyance, and then replied with a heart of confidence. Fine. It's a deal. We'll tussle with this titan you speak of. He boomed with a bit of anxiety leaking through, leaving the large bird to nod.
Very well. Have fun dying.
One of the Crescents said as they snapped their fingers and released everyone's restraints.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
Another boasted as they clapped their hands, which opened several green portals beneath the travelers. Before they had time to react, They all fell in and entered the unknown. As their screams faded, the Green Crescent looked on with stern eyes, pondering about the legitimacy to the spectral fox's condition, and even if the glitches had somehow truly returned.